The light in our living room flicked on at 2:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I was staring at my phone, hands trembling, sitting on the edge of our bed in the dark. I'd been waiting, not sleeping, not even pretending to sleep, just sitting there, listening to the silence of our house on Maple Ridge Drive, knowing that silence was about to shatter. And then it did. The front door slammed open so hard the deadbolt left a dent in the drywall, a dent I'd later photograph for the police report. My husband, Brandon, shot out of bed like he'd been electrocuted. He flipped on the hallway light and screamed. Not a shout, a scream. The kind of sound a grown man makes when he sees something that doesn't belong in his reality. His mother, Karen, was standing in our foyer at 2 a.m, mascara streaked down her face like war paint, flanked by his sister Tiffany and his Aunt Linda. 3 women, 1 mission. They'd come to tear me apart. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how 3 grown women ended up breaking into my home in the middle of the night, how a birthday dinner at Carmine's Italian Grill turned into the ugliest family explosion I've ever witnessed. You need to know what my life looked like before. You need to see the version of me that still believed peace was possible. The version that thought if I just tried a little harder, smiled a little wider, wrote 1 more check, everything would be fine. God, I was naive. Let me take you back 14 months. Brandon and I met at a conference in Austin. Corporate leadership seminar, the kind where they make you do trust falls and write your core values on sticky notes. He was an operations manager for a logistics company. I was a senior financial analyst at a mid-size firm downtown. We were both 31, both recently out of long relationships, both pretending we weren't lonely. He made me laugh during a coffee break by whispering commentary about the keynote speaker. This guy definitely practices his TED Talk in the shower, he said, and I snorted so hard I almost choked on my latte. That was it. That was the moment. Something about his timing, his warmth, the way he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in a room full of 200 people. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. I know. Fast. My best friend Megan raised an eyebrow when I told her. Ash, you haven't even survived a Thanksgiving with his family yet, she said over brunch, stabbing a piece of French toast like it had personally offended her. His family's great, I told her. His mom's a little intense, but she means well. Megan looked at me with the kind of pity that only a best friend can deliver without it feeling insulting. Intense, she repeated. That's what you're going with. Here's the thing about Karen. In small doses, she was charming. She'd hug you too tight and call you sweetheart, and bring over Tupperware containers of her famous chicken casserole. She posted Bible verses on Facebook every morning and volunteered at the church food pantry. On paper, she was a saint, but there were cracks, small ones, the kind you only notice if you're paying attention. The first time I met her, dinner at her house in Glendale, a ranch-style home with a manicured lawn and a blessed sign above the front door. She spent 45 minutes telling me about Brandon's ex-girlfriend, Nicole. Nicole was so sweet, Karen said, passing me the mashed potatoes without making eye contact. She used to help me in the garden every Saturday. She wanted kids right away, you know. Some women just have that maternal instinct. Brandon squeezed my knee under the table. Mom, Ashley's right here. Oh, I know, honey, I'm just making conversation. Karen smiled at me. It was the kind of smile that showed all her teeth. So, Ashley, do you cook? I do, actually. I love trying new recipes. Brandon needs home-cooked meals. He works so hard. Nicole used to make him lunch every single day. She'd pack it in one of those little bento boxes. Karen sighed like she was mourning a death. Anyway, tell me about your job. You work with numbers? I'm a financial analyst. Oh, that's nice. So you're good with money. She said it in a way that made good with money sound like a character flaw. I let it slide. I let a lot of things slide. Brandon and I got married in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside of town. 60 guests, a string quartet, wildflower centerpieces I'd arranged myself. It was perfect. Karen wore white. Not ivory, not cream. White. A floor-length white dress with lace sleeves. Megan's jaw nearly hit the floor. She's wearing white to your wedding, Megan hissed in the bathroom while I was fixing my veil. It's off-white, I said, even though it wasn't. Ashley, that dress is whiter than your gown. I'm not going to let it ruin my day. And I didn't. I danced with Brandon under string lights and pretended I didn't see Karen crying during our first dance. Not happy tears, but the kind of crying someone does when they feel like they're losing something. Brandon's father, Gary, had passed away 6 years earlier, and I genuinely believed Karen's tears were about missing him, about watching her son start a new chapter without his dad there to see it. I was probably half right. After the wedding, Brandon and I settled into a townhouse in Cedar Park, a nice little suburb with good schools and a Trader Joe's within walking distance. We split the mortgage 50-50. I made slightly more than Brandon, about $94,000 to his $78,000, but we never made it weird. Joint checking for bills, separate accounts for personal spending. We were a team. Life was good, really good. The kind of good that makes you nervous because you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Saturday mornings, we'd make pancakes and listen to a true crime podcast. Wednesday nights, we'd try a new restaurant. We had a standing Sunday FaceTime with my parents in Michigan, and every other Friday we'd drive out to Karen's for dinner. Those Friday dinners are where I should have seen it coming. It started small, so small that I felt crazy for even noticing. Karen would make Brandon's favorite meal and forget to check if I had dietary preferences. When I mentioned I was lactose intolerant, she served mac and cheese 3 weeks in a row. When I brought my own dish once, a quinoa salad, she looked at it like I'd set a dead animal on her table. "What is that?" Tiffany asked, poking at it with a fork. Tiffany was Brandon's younger sister, 27, still living at Karen's house, working part-time at a nail salon. She had her mother's smile, all teeth, no warmth. "Quinoa salad with roasted vegetables," I said. "We eat real food in this house," Karen said, and then laughed like it was the funniest thing anyone had ever said. Brandon laughed too. A short, uncomfortable laugh, the kind you give when you're choosing peace over principle. I ate the quinoa salad in silence, but here's the detail that matters. The detail I didn't fully understand until much later. Every single Friday dinner, at some point during the evening, Karen would bring up money. Not directly. Never directly. She'd mention that her property taxes went up. She'd sigh about the cost of Tiffany's car insurance. She'd casually drop that her hot water heater was making a sound, and the repair estimate was $1,800. And every single time, Brandon would glance at me, just a flicker, and then say, "We'll take care of it, Mom." The first time, it was $400 for a plumber. Fine. The second time, $600 for a tree removal. Okay. The third time, $1,200 for new tires on Karen's SUV, plus an alignment. I raised an eyebrow at that one, but said nothing. Then came the hot water heater. $1,800. Then Tiffany needed help with a security deposit. $1,500. Then Karen's roof had a leak. $3,200. In our first 6 months of marriage, we'd given Karen over $8,700. I finally said something on a Tuesday night in March. Brandon was brushing his teeth, and I was sitting on the bed with our bank statements open on my laptop. "Babe, can we talk about your mom's expenses?" He spit into the sink. "What about them? We've spent almost $9,000 on her in 6 months. "She's my mom, Ash. I know she's your mom, but we have our own mortgage, our own bills. We were supposed to start putting money into a savings account for a down payment on a real house. We talked about this." Brandon came out of the bathroom, toothbrush still in hand, and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, something colder. Disappointment. "My dad's gone," he said quietly. "She's got nobody. What am I supposed to do? Let her suffer?" "She's not suffering, Brandon. She has a pension, she has Social Security, and Tiffany lives there rent-free. Why isn't Tiffany contributing?" "Tiffany's figuring herself out. She's 27. Not everyone has it together at 27, Ashley." He said my name like it tasted bitter. Not everyone had parents who paid for their college. That stung. My parents had helped with my tuition, yes, but I'd also worked 2 jobs during school and graduated with $22,000 in loans that I paid off myself. I opened my mouth to say that, but Brandon had already turned off the bathroom light and climbed into bed with his back to me. "She's my mom," he said again, quieter this time. That's the end of it. I stared at the ceiling for a long time that night, listening to him breathe. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Every marriage has them. We'd figure it out. Then Karen's birthday started getting planned, and I realized we weren't figuring anything out. We were heading straight for a cliff. It was Tiffany who called me, not Brandon, not Karen. Tiffany, of all people, on a random Wednesday afternoon while I was in the middle of a quarterly report at work. "Ashley, we need to talk about Mom's birthday," she said, skipping any greeting. "Okay, when is it again?" "April 19th. We're doing dinner at Carmine's, the private dining room." I knew Carmine's. It was the nicest Italian restaurant in the area. White tablecloths, $45 entrees, a wine list that could make your credit card weep. "How many people?" I asked. 32. I almost dropped my phone. 32 people at Carmine's? It's her 60th. It needs to be special. Tiffany, that's going to cost... I did rough math in my head. Appetizers, entrees, drinks, dessert, tax, tip for a party that size. That could easily be $4,000 or $5,000, maybe more. There was a pause. Then Tiffany said, in a voice so casual it made my skin crawl, "Yeah, that's why we figured you and Brandon would cover it." I gripped the edge of my desk. My coworker Derek glanced over from his cubicle. I forced my voice to stay level. "You figured we'd cover it. You guys make good money, and Mom does so much for everyone. It's the least we could do." Well, the least you could do. The least I could do. I replayed that phrase in my head 3 times, each time feeling the temperature in my chest rise another degree. I thought about the $8,700 already spent. I thought about our empty savings account. I thought about Brandon saying, "That's the end of it," with his back turned to me in the dark. "I'll talk to Brandon," I said, and hung up before she could respond. That conversation happened on a Wednesday. Karen's birthday dinner was 17 days away, and I had no idea, not the slightest clue, that those 17 days were going to dismantle everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my husband, and the woman who raised him. What I did know, sitting at my desk with my heart pounding and Derek asking if I was okay, was one thing. Something was very, very wrong. That night, I didn't bring it up with Brandon. I needed to think first. I needed to do what I do best, run the numbers, lay out the facts, build an argument that couldn't be dismissed with, "She's my mom." So I spent the rest of the work week pulling together every transaction, every Venmo, every check we'd written to Karen or Tiffany since the wedding. I made a spreadsheet, color-coded, dates, amounts, descriptions, $8,712.43. That number sat on my screen like an accusation, not of Karen, of me, of my silence, of every time I'd bitten my tongue and told myself it was just family helping family. Nearly $9,000 in 6 months, and our savings account had exactly $340 in it. We were supposed to have $15,000 saved by now. That was the plan. That was what we'd agreed on before we signed the mortgage on the Cedar Park townhouse. I waited until Saturday morning. Pancakes, true crime podcast, our ritual. Brandon was in a good mood. He'd closed a big shipment deal at work, and he was doing that thing where he flipped pancakes too high and caught them like a show-off. I loved that version of him. I wanted to protect that version of him, but I also needed to protect us. "Hey, can we talk about your mom's birthday dinner?" I kept my voice light, casual, like it was no bigger than deciding what podcast episode to play next. Brandon didn't look up from the stove. "Yeah, Tiff mentioned it. Carmine's, right? Sounds nice." "It does, but she said 32 people, and she said we'd be covering the bill." He flipped a pancake, caught it. "Okay. Brandon, that's going to be $5,000, minimum. Probably closer to 6 with drinks and tip." "It's her 60th, Ash." "I understand that. But look." I turned my laptop around on the kitchen counter so he could see the spreadsheet. "This is everything we've paid for since the wedding. Almost $9,000. And our savings is empty. We had a plan. A house fund, remember?" He finally looked at the screen. I watched his eyes move down the rows. the plumber, the tires, the hot water heater, Tiffany's security deposit, the roof. His jaw tightened, just a little, just enough for me to notice. And for one beautiful, hopeful moment, I thought he was going to agree with me. I thought he was going to see the numbers and say, "You're right, this is too much. Let me talk to them." Instead, he said, "You made a spreadsheet about my mother." My stomach dropped. "I made a spreadsheet about our finances." "No, you tracked every dollar we've spent on my family like they're a line item in one of your quarterly reports." He turned back to the stove. His shoulders were rigid. "That's cold, Ashley." "It's not cold, it's math. We can't afford this dinner." "We can afford it." "With what? Our credit cards? We just paid off your student loans 8 months ago. We agreed. No more debt." "Then we dip into the savings." "There is no savings, Brandon. That's what I'm telling you." The pancake burned. The smoke detector didn't go off, but the smell of charred batter filled the kitchen, and neither of us moved to do anything about it. Brandon stared at the blackened circle in the pan. I stared at him. "I'll figure it out," he said finally, his voice flat. He scraped the burned pancake into the trash. "I'll talk to Tiff. Maybe we can split it." "Thank you. That's all I'm... But I don't want to hear about the spreadsheet again, ever." He didn't talk to Tiffany. I know because 4 days later, the following Wednesday, Tiffany texted me directly. Not Brandon, me. "Hey, Ashley." So I talked to the restaurant and reserved the private room. They need a credit card to hold it. "Can you call them today? Ask for Marco." I stared at that text for a full minute. Then I scrolled up to check. Had Brandon been in this thread? Had he said anything to his sister about splitting costs? No. The last message between Tiffany and me was from 2 months ago when she'd sent me a link to a TikTok about wives who don't cook with 3 laughing emojis. I called Brandon at work. He picked up on the 4th ring. "Did you talk to Tiffany about splitting the dinner cost?" Silence. Then, "I've been busy, Ash. I'll get to it." She just texted me asking for my credit card to hold the reservation. Just, "Can you handle it for now? I'll talk to her this weekend. Brandon, I'm in the middle of something. We'll discuss it tonight." We didn't discuss it tonight. We didn't discuss it the next night either. What happened instead was worse. Thursday evening, Karen called. Not Brandon's phone, mine. She never called me directly. The sound of her name on my screen made my pulse spike. "Hi, Karen." "Ashley, sweetie." Her voice was honey over broken glass. "I just wanted to thank you so much for handling the dinner. Tiffany told me you're taking care of everything. You are just the most generous daughter-in-law." I sat down on the edge of the bathtub because my knees felt strange. "Karen, I think there might be a misunderstanding." "I've already told all my friends. 32 people. The private room at Carmine's. And my wonderful daughter-in-law is treating everyone. Pastor David is coming, and the Hendersons, and my book club ladies. Everyone is so excited." She'd already told people. 32 people believed I was hosting this dinner. If I pulled out now, I wouldn't just be saying no to Karen. I'd be publicly humiliating her in front of her pastor, her friends, her entire social circle. And she knew that. She absolutely knew that. "Karen, Brandon and I haven't finalized..." "Oh, honey, don't worry about the details. You're so good with money, I know you'll make it perfect. I've got to run. Tiffany and I are picking out my outfit. Love you, bye." She hung up before I could finish a sentence. I sat on the edge of that bathtub for 10 minutes, phone in my lap, staring at the tile floor. I felt it then. The trap. It had been closing around me for months, maybe since the beginning, and I'd been too busy trying to be the good wife, the accommodating daughter-in-law, the woman who keeps the peace to see it. Karen didn't need my permission. She didn't need Brandon to ask me. She just needed to create a situation where saying no would cost me more than saying yes. When Brandon got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the laptop open. No spreadsheet this time, just our checking account balance, $2,847. Our credit card, $1,200 available. Our savings, $340. "Your mother called me," I said. No warmth, no easing into it. "She's told 32 people that I'm paying for her birthday dinner." Brandon set his keys on the counter. He didn't look surprised. That's what killed me. He didn't look surprised. You knew, I whispered. She mentioned she was going to call you. And you didn't warn me. You didn't tell her we hadn't agreed to this? I was going to talk to her. When, Brandon? The dinner is in 9 days. She's told her pastor. She's told the Hendersons. She's told her entire book club. He rubbed his face with both hands. Look, maybe we can put it on the credit card and pay it off over a couple months. We said no more debt. That was our agreement. It's one dinner. It's $6,000 we don't have for a woman who hasn't said a genuine kind word to me since the day we met. The words came out louder than I intended. They echoed off the kitchen cabinets and hung in the air between us. Brandon's face changed. Something shuddered behind his eyes. That's my mother you're talking about. I know exactly who I'm talking about. She welcomed you into this family. She wore white to our wedding, Brandon. That landed. I saw it land. A flinch, barely visible, but there. He'd never acknowledged the dress. Not on our wedding day, not in any conversation since. It was the family's open secret, the thing everyone saw and no one named. That was... She didn't mean anything by that. She wore a white dress to her son's wedding and cried during our first dance. She compares me to Nicole every chance she gets. She feeds me food she knows makes me sick. And now she's volunteered my wallet for a $6,000 party without asking me. Brandon was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low and strange. My dad would have just done it. He never questioned taking care of his family. I felt like I'd been slapped. I'm not your father, and you are not your mother's husband. He grabbed his keys off the counter and walked out. The front door closed. Not slammed, closed. And I heard his truck start in the driveway. He didn't come home until after midnight. I know because I was awake, sitting in the dark, watching headlights sweep across the ceiling when he finally pulled in. He slept on the couch that night, and the next morning he acted like nothing had happened. I called Megan on my lunch break. I told her everything. The spreadsheet, the phone call from Karen, Brandon walking out. She listened without interrupting, which for Megan meant it was serious. Ash, I need to ask you something, and I need you to actually hear it. Okay? Has it occurred to you that this isn't about the dinner? What do you mean? I mean, the dinner is the test. Karen is testing whether she controls Brandon or whether you do, and right now, she's winning. I pressed my forehead against my steering wheel. I was sitting in my car in the office parking lot, and the spring sun was warm on my back, and everything should have been fine, and nothing was. So what do? You decide what you're willing to lose. I thought about that for the rest of the day, and that night I made a decision. I called Carmine's and spoke to Marco. I gave him my credit card to hold the reservation. I agreed to the private dining room. I told myself this was the last time, one final act of generosity, and then Brandon and I would have a real conversation, with a marriage counselor if necessary, about boundaries. It was the biggest mistake I could have made, not because of the money, because of what Karen did with my willingness. 6 days before the party, Tiffany called again. So Mom wants a 3-tier cake from Belmont Bakery. The one she likes is $475, and she wants a photographer. Her friend Diane charges $600 for 2 hours. Can you handle those too? I closed my eyes. Tiffany, I'm already covering the dinner for 32 people. Right, but the cake and photographer are separate. It's her 60th, Ashley. You only turn 60 once. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, I'll talk to Brandon. But I already knew how that conversation would go, and I already knew what I was going to do about it. I just didn't know yet what Karen had already set in motion behind my back. The conversation she'd had with Brandon 3 days earlier, the one he never told me about, the one I wouldn't discover until I was standing in the bathroom at Carmine's on April 19th, overhearing words through a wall that made my blood turn to ice. The days between that phone call with Tiffany and the actual dinner passed in a fog of quiet dread. I ordered the cake from Belmont Bakery. $475. I booked Diane, the photographer. $600. I called Marco at Carmine's and confirmed the private dining room, the pre-fix menu, the wine packages. The total estimate he gave me over the phone was $5,280, not including tax and gratuity. With everything, cake, photographer, dinner, I was looking at roughly $6,800. I put it on our credit card, the one with a $7,500 limit that we'd paid down to 8 months ago, the one we'd sworn we'd never use again except for emergencies. Brandon didn't ask about it. Not once. He came home every night, kissed me on the forehead, ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. We existed in the same house like two people sharing a waiting room, polite, distant, waiting for something neither of us would name. On April 19th, the day of the dinner, I spent 3 hours getting ready. I wore a navy blue dress I'd bought for a work gala the year before. I curled my hair. I put on the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, you are about to spend nearly $7,000 to be insulted in a nice restaurant. But I went, because I still believed, God help me, that if I did this one last thing, it would buy me enough goodwill to have the boundary conversation afterward, that Karen would see my generosity and soften, that Brandon would see my sacrifice and wake up. We arrived at Carmine's at 6:45 p.m. The private dining room was beautiful, exposed brick, dim lighting, long table set with white linens and candles. Karen was already there, holding court in a burgundy dress, her hair freshly done, laughing with Pastor David and his wife. When she saw me, she opened her arms wide. There she is, my beautiful daughter-in-law, the woman who made all of this happen. She hugged me, tight, too tight, and then she whispered in my ear, so quietly that only I could hear, "Try to smile tonight, sweetheart. You always look so serious." I smiled. Of course I smiled. The guests filed in, 32 people just as promised. Karen's book club ladies, the Hendersons, Aunt Linda with her husband Roy, cousins I'd never met, friends from church. Tiffany arrived in a red dress that looked brand new and immediately started taking selfies. Brandon shook hands, hugged relatives, slipped into his role as the dutiful son. He was good at it, effortless. Dinner was served family style. Platters of chicken parmesan, pasta, bruschetta, Caesar salads. Wine flowed. Karen made a toast about being blessed, about family, about how God always provides. She looked directly at me when she said that last part. At 8:30 p.m., I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I needed 2 minutes, just 2 minutes alone to breathe, to unclench my jaw, to stop performing. The bathroom at Carmine's was down a narrow hallway past the kitchen. It was a single-stall room with a heavy wooden door. I went in, locked it, and leaned against the wall. My face hurt from smiling, and then I heard voices. The hallway was narrow, and the wall between the bathroom and the storage alcove next to it was thin. 2 women were talking just on the other side, and I recognized both voices instantly. Karen and Tiffany. "She's been quiet all night," Tiffany said. "You think she's mad?" "Who cares?" Karen's voice was sharp, stripped of the honey she wore in public. "Let her be mad. She can afford it." "Mom, what if she finds out about what you told Brandon?" My hand froze on the door handle. "She won't," Karen said. "And even if she does, what's she going to do? Brandon already agreed. He called the attorney on Tuesday." Attorney. The word hit me like a physical blow. He's really going to do it? Tiffany sounded almost giddy. He's going to file for a post-nuptial agreement. My idea. If she refuses to sign, that tells him everything he needs to know about her character. And if she signs, well, then we're protected. Protected from what? From her, Tiffany. From a woman who keeps a spreadsheet of every dollar she spends on her own family. You think that's normal? You think that's love? Karen's voice dripped with contempt. I told Brandon, if she's tracking money like that now, imagine what she'll do in a divorce. She'll take everything. The house, his 401k, everything. So the post-nup separates assets. What's his stays his. What's hers stays hers. And since I helped with the down payment on that townhouse, I stopped breathing. Karen had not helped with the down payment. Not 1 cent. Brandon and I had saved that money together. $18,000 split evenly. before the wedding. I had the bank records. I had the closing documents. She had contributed nothing. The house is partially mine, Karen finished. Brandon understands that. Tiffany laughed. Ashley's going to lose it. Ashley's going to do what she always does, smile and write a check. Their voices faded as they walked back toward the dining room. I stood in that bathroom with my back against the wall, hands shaking so badly I couldn't unlock the door. My vision blurred. Not tears. Something worse. A kind of tunnel vision, like the world was collapsing to a single point. She'd been planning this, not just the dinner, not just the money. Karen had been engineering my isolation, turning my husband against me, reframing my financial responsibility as cold-heartedness, positioning herself as the victim of a greedy wife. The dinner wasn't a birthday celebration. It was a victory lap. And Brandon, my husband, the man who made me laugh at a conference in Austin, who caught pancakes like a show-off on Saturday mornings, had called an attorney, behind my back, on his mother's advice. I don't know how long I stood in that bathroom. 5 minutes, 15, long enough that my absence was noticed. I heard Karen's voice from the dining room, loud enough to carry down the hall, loud enough for all 32 guests to hear. "Where's your wife? Who's going to pay for this banquet?" Laughter, some of it nervous, some of it genuine. Then Karen again, louder. "Brandon, go find her. The check isn't going to pay itself." I heard Brandon's muffled response, then footsteps approaching down the hallway, a knock on the bathroom door. "Ash, you okay?" I opened the door. He must have seen something on my face because he stepped back. "What's wrong?" "I heard your mother," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "In the hallway, talking to Tiffany about the postnuptial agreement, about the attorney you called on Tuesday." The color drained from Brandon's face. Actually drained, like watching someone pull a plug on a bathtub. His skin went from warm to gray in under a second. "Ash, let me explain." "Did you call an attorney?" "It's not what you think." "Did you call an attorney, Brandon?" My mom suggested, "Yes or no?" "Yes." I nodded once. Then I walked past him, down the hallway, through the kitchen, and out the back door of Carmine's Italian Grill. I didn't return to the dining room. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't pay the check. I got in my car and drove. Not home. I couldn't go home. Home was the townhouse on Maple Ridge Drive that Karen was already claiming as partially hers. Home was the bed where Brandon slept with his back to me. Home was a trap. I drove to Megan's apartment. It was 9:40 p.m. She opened the door in sweatpants, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. I sat on her couch and told her everything. The overheard conversation, the attorney, the postnup, Karen's lie about the down payment. Megan listened with her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. When I finished, she said 3 words. "Call Jennifer Whitfield." "Who?" "Divorce attorney. Best in the county. My cousin used her when her ex tried to hide assets. Jennifer doesn't lose." "Megan, I don't know if I'm getting divorced." "Ashley." Megan grabbed both my hands. "That woman told your husband to lawyer up against you. She's claiming equity in your house. She just screamed, 'Who's paying?' in front of 32 people to humiliate you. And your husband, let all of it happen. This isn't a marriage anymore. This is a siege." My phone was buzzing. Brandon, Karen, Tiffany. Brandon again. I turned it face down on the couch. "I need to think," I said. "You need to act," Megan said. "Thinking is what got you here." She was right. Thinking, analyzing, accommodating, spreadsheet building, peacekeeping was exactly what got me here. Every rational, careful, measured response I'd ever given had been weaponized against me. My patience became passivity. My generosity became a budget line. My silence became consent. At 10:15 p.m., I picked up my phone and texted Brandon one sentence. "Do not let your mother into our house tonight. I need space." At 10:22 p.m., I called Carmine's and spoke to Marco. I told him I would not be paying the bill. I told him the host of the party was Karen, and the bill should be presented to her table. Marco sounded confused, but agreed. At 10:30 p.m., I opened my laptop on Megan's kitchen table and began downloading every financial document I could access. Our joint bank statements, the mortgage agreement, the closing documents for the townhouse, showing both names and zero contribution from Karen. My pay stubs, Brandon's pay stubs, the credit card statement showing the $6,800 in charges for Karen's birthday. At 10:47 p.m., Megan handed me a glass of wine and a Post-it note with a phone number. Jennifer Whitfield. Call her first thing Monday. At 11:15 p.m., I drove home. The house was dark. Brandon's truck was in the driveway. I went inside, locked the front door, and sat on the edge of our bed in the dark. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't change out of my navy dress. I just sat there, phone in my hands, watching the minutes tick past midnight. Brandon was asleep, or pretending to be. I could hear his breathing, slow and even, from across the mattress. The space between us felt like a canyon. At 1:45 a.m., my phone lit up. A text from Tiffany. "You're done. Mom is coming over. You better have an explanation." I read it twice. Then I set my phone on the nightstand and waited. At 2:17 a.m., the front door exploded open. The sound Brandon made. That scream. It wasn't fear of an intruder. It was fear of being caught between two worlds that had finally collided in his foyer at 2 a.m. I didn't move from the bed. I sat there in my navy dress, pearls still on, and listened. "Mom, what the... How did you get in?" Brandon's voice cracked on the last word. "Tiffany has a key," Karen said, like that was perfectly reasonable. Like her daughter having a copy of our house key, a key I never authorized, was the most natural thing in the world. "You gave Tiffany a key to my house?" I called from the bedroom. My voice was steady, eerily steady. I'd had 4 hours of sitting in the dark to burn through every emotion, rage, grief, humiliation, and what was left was something harder, something Karen had never encountered from me before. Silence. I walked out of the bedroom and down the hall. Karen stood in the foyer, mascara streaked, breathing hard. Tiffany was behind her, arms crossed, chin lifted. Aunt Linda hovered near the door like she wasn't sure she wanted to be there. Smart woman. "There she is," Karen said, pointing at me. "There's the woman who humiliated me in front of 32 people." "How did I humiliate you?" "You left. You walked out of my birthday dinner without paying. Marco brought the check to me, Ashley, $8,412, in front of Pastor David, in front of the Hendersons." $8,412, more than my estimate. Someone had ordered extra wine. "That sounds expensive," I said. "How did you handle it?" Karen's face contorted. "I had to call Roy." She gestured at Aunt Linda. "And he put it on his card. Do you understand what you've done? You've embarrassed this entire family." "I embarrassed this family," I repeated. "Not the woman who screamed, who's going to pay for this banquet in front of 32 guests while I was in the bathroom. That wasn't embarrassing." "I was joking." "You weren't joking. You were performing. The same way you've been performing since the day I met you." I turned to Brandon. He was standing in the hallway in his boxers and a t-shirt, looking like a man watching his own car accident in slow motion. "Tell your mother about the attorney, Brandon." Karen's eyes flickered. Just for a second, a micro-expression of panic. "Tell her what you told me tonight," I continued. "Or should I tell her what I overheard at Carmine's? The conversation she had with Tiffany about the post-nuptial agreement? About how she coached you to call a lawyer? About how she told Tiffany the down payment on this house was partially hers?" The room went dead silent. Linda looked at Karen. Tiffany looked at the floor. Brandon looked at his hands. "Ashley, you're twisting things," Karen started. "I have the closing documents, Karen. Your name isn't on any of them. You contributed $0 to this house. I have the bank records. I have the wire transfer receipts. Both names, mine and Brandon's. Not yours. Not a single cent from you." Karen turned to Brandon. "Are you going to let her talk to me like this?" And Brandon, the man I married, the man who caught pancakes on Saturday mornings, said nothing. He stood there with his arms at his sides and said absolutely nothing. I watched Karen wait for her son to defend her, and I watched the silence stretch, and something shifted in the room, something permanent. "Get out of my house," I said. "Your house?" Tiffany stepped forward. "Brandon's name is on that mortgage too. And so is mine. And I'm telling you, all three of you, to leave. Right now. It's 2 a.m. You broke into my home with a key I never gave you. If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I'm calling 911. "Brandon!" Karen's voice went shrill. "Brandon!" He looked at me, then at his mother, then at me again. And in the longest 5 seconds of my life, he said, "Mom, you need to go." Karen made a sound I'd never heard from a human being, something between a gasp and a wail. Tiffany grabbed her arm. Linda was already out the door. They left. The door closed, and Brandon and I stood in our foyer 3 feet apart, staring at each other across a distance that felt infinite. "We're done talking tonight," I said. "Tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer. You should probably call yours." He opened his mouth, closed it, walked back to the bedroom. I went to the couch. Neither of us slept. Monday morning at 9:01 a.m., I called the number on Megan's Post-it note. "Jennifer Whitfield's office. I need a consultation. Today, if possible. It's urgent." Jennifer had a cancellation at 2 p.m. I took a half day at work, told Derek I had a personal emergency, and drove to a downtown office on 6th Street. Jennifer Whitfield was not what I expected. She was mid-50s, silver hair and a sharp bob, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and she had the calm energy of someone who had seen the absolute worst of human behavior and was no longer surprised by any of it. I sat down and told her everything. The $8,712 in payments to Karen, the $6,800 birthday dinner, the overheard conversation at Carmine's, the post-nup scheme, the 2 a.m. break-in, the unauthorized key. Jennifer took notes without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Do you have documentation for all of this?" "Everything. Bank statements, closing documents, credit card statements, text messages from Tiffany about the dinner costs. I downloaded it all the night of the party." Jennifer smiled. It was the first warm thing I'd felt in days. "Ashley, I need you to understand something. In this state, a postnuptial agreement requires full disclosure of assets from both parties and must be entered into voluntarily. If your husband's attorney drafted something based on his mother's false claim of contributing to the down payment, and if they intended to pressure you into signing, that's not just unenforceable, that's potential fraud." My hands started shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something else entirely. What do I do? First, we freeze the joint accounts. Today, you open a personal account and redirect your paycheck immediately. Second, I send a letter to your husband's attorney. Do you know which firm he contacted? No. We'll find out. Third, and this is important, you file a police report about the unauthorized entry, not because you want to prosecute, but because it creates a paper trail. If Karen escalates, and women like Karen always escalate, you want documentation. I filed the police report that afternoon. I photographed the dent in the drywall from where the door had slammed open. I showed the officer Tiffany's text. "You're done. Mom is coming over." He documented everything. Tuesday, I opened a personal checking account and moved my direct deposit. I transferred $1,400, my half of what remained in joint checking, into my new account. I left Brandon's half untouched. Jennifer told me that was important. Fair, documented, defensible. Wednesday, Jennifer sent a letter to Brandon at our home address. I wasn't there when it arrived. I was at work. But Brandon called me at 3:47 p.m. I got a letter from an attorney. His voice was hollow. "I know. Ashley, can we just talk? Just us?" "Your mother is in your ear, Brandon. There is no just us anymore." "I'll tell her to back off. You called a lawyer on her advice. You let her claim she paid for our house. You stood in our hallway and couldn't even look me in the eye. Talking isn't going to fix this." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Do you want a divorce?" I pressed my phone against my forehead. "I want a marriage, a real one, but I don't think you know how to give me that." Thursday, Karen made her next move. And this one almost broke me. She posted on Facebook a long, tearful status update that read like a sermon. She wrote about a family crisis and asked for prayers. She wrote that her son's wife had abandoned her birthday dinner and left her with a bill she couldn't afford. She wrote that she was heartbroken that the woman her son married put money above family. She didn't use my name, but she didn't need to. Everyone knew. Within 2 hours, it had 47 comments. Praying for you, Karen. Some people show their true colors. Brandon deserves better. Pastor David's wife, Carol, wrote, "Family is everything. Money comes and goes." Megan screenshotted all of it and sent it to me with one word: evidence. I forwarded everything to Jennifer. She called me within 20 minutes. "This is defamation, Ashley. She's publicly accusing you of financial abandonment with false statements. We can use this." "I don't want to sue Karen." "You might not have to, but I want you to write a response. Not on Facebook. Nothing public. Write a detailed, factual account of every dollar you've spent on that family, and we'll have it ready if this goes further." I wrote it that night. 4 pages. Every dollar, every date, every ignored boundary. I wrote about the mac and cheese she served, knowing I was lactose intolerant. I wrote about the white dress. I wrote about Nicole's bento boxes. I wrote about the whisper at Carmine's. "Try to smile tonight, sweetheart." Friday, Jennifer called with news that changed everything. I found Brandon's attorney, small firm on the west side, Patterson and Associates. I had a conversation with his lawyer, a man named Greg Patterson. "Ashley, listen to me carefully." "I'm listening." Greg Patterson told me, off the record, that when Brandon came in, he presented the postnuptial agreement as a mutual decision. He told Greg that you had agreed to it. He also told Greg that his mother had contributed $18,000 to the down payment on your home. That's a lie. I know, and I told Greg that. I sent him the closing documents, the wire transfer records. Greg went very quiet. Then he said, "I need to have a conversation with my client." "Ashley, Greg Patterson is not a bad attorney. When he sees that his client lied to him about material facts, he's going to drop Brandon or force a correction. Either way, the postnup is dead." I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building and cried. Not sad tears, relief. The kind of crying your body does when it finally understands that the trap you've been caught in has a door and someone just showed you where the handle is. That weekend, I moved my clothes and essentials to Megan's apartment. I didn't take anything of Brandon's. I didn't take anything from the common areas. I took my grandmother's pearl earrings, my laptop, my documents, and 2 suitcases of clothing. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Brandon came home to find it there. He called me 17 times. I answered on the 18th. "Come home," he said. He was crying. "Please, I'll fix this." "How?" "I'll cut my mom off. I'll cancel the attorney. I'll do counseling. Whatever you want." I wanted you to choose me, Brandon. One time. I wanted you to hear your mother lie about our home and say, "That's not true." I wanted you to hear her scream about money in front of 32 people and say, "That's enough." I wanted you to be my husband. I am your husband. Then act like it, because right now you're Karen's son, and that's all you are. He didn't call again that night. Monday morning, Jennifer called with one final piece of information. The piece that would blow everything wide open. "Ashley, I subpoenaed Karen's bank records as part of discovery prep. I found something you need to see. Can you come to my office at noon?" I was there at 11:45. Jennifer slid a printed bank statement across her desk. I looked at the highlighted line. My vision tunneled. Karen had a savings account, not the modest pension and Social Security situation Brandon had described. A savings account with a balance of $143,000. $143,000. The woman who'd cried about her property taxes, who'd begged for help with a hot water heater, who'd let me pay $6,800 for her birthday dinner, had been sitting on $143,000 the entire time. "There's more," Jennifer said. She slid a second page across the desk. Monthly deposits. $1,200 a month from a rental property in Glendale she owns outright, and a $2,100 monthly pension from her late husband's employer. Gary's pension. Gary's pension that Karen had told Brandon barely covered her groceries. I stared at those numbers until they blurred. Then I looked up at Jennifer. She's not broke. She's not even close to broke. She's been bleeding you dry while sitting on a 6-figure nest egg. Brandon doesn't know. Are you sure about that? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I was about to find out because Jennifer had one more thing to tell me, and it was the thing that would change everything. There's a hearing scheduled for next Friday, she said. Brandon's attorney filed a motion, before he saw our documents, requesting temporary financial orders as a precursor to the postnup, which means Brandon will be in a courtroom, and so will you, and Karen's financial records will be entered into evidence. Jennifer leaned forward. She's going to be exposed, Ashley, in a courtroom, on the record, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. I drove back to work with my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in weeks. My phone buzzed, a text from Karen. I almost didn't read it, but something made me look. I know what you're doing, Ashley. You think you're so smart with your spreadsheets and your lawyer, but Brandon is my son. He will always be my son, and when this is over, you'll have nothing. I read it twice. Then I screenshotted it and forwarded it to Jennifer. Friday was 6 days away, and Karen had no idea what was coming. The 6 days before the hearing were the quietest of my life. I stayed at Megan's apartment, slept on her pull-out couch, went to work, came home, reviewed documents with Jennifer over the phone. Brandon texted me every day, long, rambling messages that swung between apology and accusation. I love you. Please come home. Then, 3 hours later, my mom is devastated. You destroyed her birthday. I hope you're happy. Then, the next morning, I didn't mean that. I'm lost without you. Please. I didn't respond to any of them. Jennifer told me not to, and for the first time in my marriage, I listened to someone who was actually looking out for me. Thursday night, the night before the hearing, Karen made one last play. She showed up at Megan's apartment. I don't know how she got the address. Brandon, probably, or Tiffany stalked my location through some app. It didn't matter. At 7:30 p.m., Megan's doorbell rang, and there was Karen, standing in the hallway in her church clothes, holding a Tupperware container of chicken casserole. I come in peace, she said. Her eyes were red. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the last 2 weeks had physically shrunk her. Megan stepped in front of me. She doesn't want to talk to you. I'm not talking to you, Megan. I'm talking to my daughter-in-law. Karen looked past her at me. Ashley, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Against Megan's furious head shaking, I stepped forward. Say what you came to say. Karen's lip trembled. I know about tomorrow. Brandon told me about the hearing. He told me they have my bank records. She paused, swallowed. I'm asking you, mother to daughter. Please don't do this. Don't put our family's business in front of a judge. Your family's business became my business when you spent 14 months draining my bank account while sitting on $143,000. Karen flinched. That money is my retirement. Gary left that for me. It's all I have for my future. And what about my future, Karen? What about the $8,700 in repairs and deposits? The $6,800 birthday dinner, the savings account Brandon and I were supposed to build. You took all of that while pretending to be broke. I never asked for. You engineered every single ask, the sighing about property taxes, the sounds your hot water heater was making. You trained Brandon to offer before you had to ask, and when that wasn't enough, you told him to get a lawyer and lie about paying for our house. Karen's chin lifted. The trembling stopped. And just like that, like flipping a switch, the mask came back on. You'll regret this, she said softly. Brandon will never forgive you. Brandon hasn't forgiven himself yet. That's not my problem to solve. She left the casserole on the doormat. Megan threw it in the dumpster. Friday morning, 9 a.m., family court, 4th floor, courtroom 4B. Jennifer met me in the lobby wearing a charcoal suit and carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen 100 battles. She handed me a coffee. How are you feeling? Like I'm about to throw up. Good, that means you care. People who don't care don't win. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. A judge's bench, 2 tables, a gallery with wooden pews. Brandon was already there with Greg Patterson, his attorney. Brandon looked terrible. Unshaved, dark circles, wrinkled dress shirt. When he saw me, his eyes went wide, then dropped to the floor. Greg Patterson looked like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Karen was in the gallery. Tiffany, too. Aunt Linda was notably absent. The judge, Honorable Margaret Chen, entered at 9:15. She was maybe 60, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that suggested she had zero tolerance for nonsense. Greg Patterson spoke first. He explained that his client had initially sought a post-nuptial agreement but was withdrawing the motion. Jennifer stood immediately. Your Honor, we object to the withdrawal at this time. My client has evidence of financial fraud and coercive behavior that the court needs to see, regardless of whether the post-nup motion proceeds. Judge Chen looked at Jennifer over her glasses. What kind of evidence? Jennifer opened her briefcase. Bank records showing that the respondent's mother, Karen, maintained a savings balance of $143,000 while systematically extracting $8,712 from the marital finances under the pretense of financial hardship. Records showing $3,300 in monthly income from a pension and rental property. A fraudulent claim made to Mr. Patterson that she contributed $18,000 to the couple's home purchase, a claim contradicted by closing documents showing zero outside contribution, and text messages establishing a pattern of financial coercion and an unauthorized entry into the marital home at 2:17 a.m. The courtroom went silent. I could hear Karen breathing behind me, short, sharp breaths, like a cornered animal. Judge Chen took the documents. She read for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. Is Karen present in the courtroom? Karen stood. Her voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, did you tell your son that you contributed to the down payment on his home? Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again. There was a misunderstanding. It's a yes or no question. I may have implied. Did you have $143,000 in savings while your son and his wife were paying your household expenses? Tiffany grabbed Karen's arm. Karen pulled away. That money is my retirement. Ma'am, answer the question. Yes. Judge Chen set down the papers. She looked at Brandon. Mr. Calloway, were you aware of your mother's financial situation? Brandon's voice cracked. No, Your Honor, I was not. He turned around and looked at Karen. And that's when I saw it. The exact moment Brandon understood everything. Not just the money, the manipulation, the years of I have nobody, the tears, the guilt, the invisible leash she'd kept around his neck since his father died. It hit him all at once, and his face crumbled. Mom, he whispered, you told me you were struggling. Karen said nothing. Judge Chen issued her ruling. The postnuptial motion was denied with prejudice. She ordered a full financial disclosure from both parties and recommended mediation before any further proceedings. She also noted, for the record, that the unauthorized entry into our home warranted a restraining order if I chose to pursue one. I didn't pursue it, not because Karen deserved mercy, because I was done spending my energy on her. Outside the courtroom, Brandon caught me in the hallway. Jennifer stepped aside, giving us space but staying within earshot. Ash. His eyes were red. I didn't know. About the money. About any of it. I swear. I believe you didn't know about the savings account, but you knew she was lying about the down payment, Brandon. You were there at closing. You signed the papers. You knew exactly where that $18,000 came from. He didn't deny it. Why? I asked. The question I'd been carrying for weeks. Why would you go along with that? Because she's my mom, and after Dad died, she fell apart, and I was the only one left. Tiffany's useless. You know that. I was all she had, and she kept saying if I didn't take care of her, nobody would, and I believed her. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I believed her over you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stood there in that courthouse hallway with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and I felt something I didn't expect. Sadness. Not for me. For him. For the boy who lost his father and got consumed by a mother who turned grief into a weapon. But sadness doesn't fix what's broken. I'm filing for divorce, Brandon. He nodded, slowly, like he'd known it was coming, but hearing it still landed like a physical blow. Is there anything I can do? You can get therapy, real therapy, not for me, for you. Because if you don't figure out where Brandon ends and Karen begins, this will happen to the next woman you love too. Karen was waiting by the elevator. When she saw me approach, she straightened her spine and lifted her chin. One last performance. I hope you're satisfied, she said. I stopped in front of her, close enough to smell her perfume, the same one she'd worn to our wedding, to every Friday dinner, to the birthday party at Carmine's. Karen, I want you to hear this, because I'm only going to say it once. I was a good wife to your son. I was generous with your family, more generous than you deserved, and you spent 14 months trying to destroy me because you couldn't stand the idea that Brandon might love someone more than he fears you. That's not my failing. That's yours. She opened her mouth. I didn't wait for whatever came out. I walked past her to the elevator, pressed the button, and didn't look back. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later. Jennifer was worth every penny. I kept my 401k, my personal savings, and my name on the townhouse, which Brandon agreed to sign over in exchange for a clean split on everything else. He couldn't afford the mortgage alone, so I sold it 4 months later for a $31,000 profit. Half of that went to paying off the credit card Karen's birthday had maxed out. The other half went into a savings account, a real one, in my name only. Brandon moved back in with Karen. I heard from Megan, who heard from a mutual friend, that he started therapy 3 months after the divorce. I hope that's true. I genuinely hope he finds his way out of that house, out of that guilt, out of the shadow his mother built around him. But that's his journey now, not mine. Karen blocked me on Facebook. Tiffany sent me one last text. Karma's coming for you, which I screenshotted, forwarded to Jennifer, and never responded to. Aunt Linda, of all people, sent me a card in the mail, no return address. It just said, I'm sorry, she's always been like this. You deserved better. I'm writing this from my new apartment, a 1-bedroom in a walkable neighborhood with a coffee shop downstairs and a farmer's market on Saturdays. It's smaller than the townhouse, quieter. Mine. My grandmother's pearl earrings sit in a dish on my nightstand. My spreadsheets are for my own budget now, and nobody calls them cold. Last Saturday, Megan and I went to brunch. She stabbed a piece of French toast and looked at me across the table. You look different, she said. Different how? Like you're not performing anymore. I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and surprised. She was right. For 14 months, I'd been smiling on command, writing checks to keep the peace, shrinking myself to fit inside a family that was never going to make room for me. And the version of me that walked out of Carmine's that night, the one who stopped smiling and started speaking, she's the one who survived. I don't regret the money. I don't even regret the marriage. Brandon taught me what love looks like when it's conditional. And that lesson cost me $15,512.43 in 1 year of my life. Some people pay more and learn less. But if you take one thing from my story, let it be this. The moment someone tells you that tracking your own money makes you heartless, they are telling you exactly who they are. Believe them, and then protect yourself, because no one else at that table is going to.